What's up, you guys, and welcome back to the Morning Movement Coffee channel. Today I'm going to be showing you guys how to make a great pour over at home. But what I'm going to do is show you tips and tricks throughout this process to make your coffee at home as good as it can be for your taste buds and your coffee in your cupboard. First, let me just show you all the tools that I've laid out here. We have an electric kettle, followed by a Crystalline coffee dripper. Behind that, we have a V60 paper coffee filter. I like the bleached ones. You can get the unbleached, but I think these get better results. Next, we have a little metal chopstick, followed by a metal cupping coffee spoon. It doesn't need to be a cupping spoon, but we are in the coffee lab and all the spoons here, we have our cupping spoons. Next, we have a Hario coffee scale, followed by a glass coffee carafe. We have a little plastic scoop to scoop our coffee, a bag of Panamanian washed coffee that's delicious, and finally, a hand burr coffee grinder. So the first thing we're gonna do is turn on our electric kettle, give it some time to heat up, and this is the first variable that you're gonna be able to set. So the temperature of the water is greatly gonna impact the final result of your coffee. So for today, I'm gonna set my electric kettle to 190 degrees. And now here's a very broad and basic tip for you. The darker the roasted coffee that you have, the lower the temperature I recommend you use. And the lighter the roasted coffee you have, the higher temperature you can go with. So for today, we're gonna be brewing coffee that's roasted to a full City Plus, which means we wanna go a little bit lower in temperature. That's why I'm gonna be setting it to 190. If you're brewing coffee that's roasted darker than this, you can go down to 185. And if you're brewing coffee that's really light, you can push it all the way up to 202, 203 degrees Fahrenheit. Now while this kettle's heating up, I'm going to set the grind size on my hand burr grinder. This is why I really recommend burr grinders like this and not maybe one of those blade grinders with the button that you can't really have any control over. We really want consistency when we're brewing coffee. In this grinder, it has this little metal dial here and we can twist it, and the more we twist this, the coarser the grind is going to be. So we brewed this coffee over and over again, and I know that on 21 clicks on this Time More C2 hand grinder, that's the perfect grind size for me with this coffee. 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. Now you might be wondering, why are you gonna take so much time and why do you care so much about grind size? Because that's gonna change the flow of the water. So as that water passes through those coffee grinds, the coarser your grind is, the faster it's gonna flow through. And the finer it is, the longer it's gonna take to flow through. So you're gonna try to find that perfect spot for you. So now we're gonna turn on the Hario scale and I'm gonna place this grinder on top. So if this is your first time brewing coffee like this, I highly recommend that you start with a 15:1 ratio, which means you're gonna use 15 parts of water to 1 part of coffee. So what I'm gonna do is weigh out 20 grams of coffee and plan on using 300 grams of water. I remember when I first started making coffee like this, and I would kind of just rough it, and I would do 22 grams or 18.5 grams or 23 grams. You really want to try to control every single variable, so I really recommend you get it exactly on 20 grams on the button. And what that's going to do is allow you to repeat these results over and over again. So now I'm going to start grinding, and this does take a minute, but the reason that this is so much better than a blade grinder is it gives you consistent grind sizes. So every grind in here is going to be very, very close to the same size. So with these grinders, you know you're all done when it gets nice and buttery smooth like that. And now I'm going to set the grinder down and prepare to brew. So I'm gonna put the carafe on the scale, put the Crystalline on top, and then open up this paper filter. And there's a little seam here. And what you wanna do is actually fold that paper over like that so it makes a perfect cone shape. And then we're gonna place that right inside of the Crystalline. Now this next tip is something that's a little bit of a trick, and this is where the spoon is gonna come in. And what I recommend you do is you take the spoon and put it right in the middle of the filter and set it right where that paper tab is folded over. If you're wondering why you should do this, it's because little air pockets tend to form in between the filter and the brewer. And what we're trying to do is limit any variables that can change the outcome of this brew. So that spoon is actually gonna push down the filter a little bit, which is gonna help negate any air bubbles that will form. And we're just gonna take some hot water and we're gonna pour it starting in the center and then working our way to the outside, going all the way around. And if you're wondering, why are you doing this? Why are you gonna waste your time rinsing the filter? It's because when you're working with really good and delicate coffees, the coffee will actually absorb those paper notes and it'll really ruin the whole coffee itself. So now you're gonna take your spoon out, and here's another tip. Make sure you dump this water out, or else when you brew your coffee into here, it'll overflow and it'll also taste really bad. I know from experience because I've done it many times early in the morning while I'm still half asleep. So make sure there's no paper or water in there. Now I'm gonna take the coffee that I freshly ground and I'm gonna open up the bottom, and I'm gonna try to put this coffee dead center in the middle of this paper filter. Now if you're looking for a visual on what these grounds look like, it kind of looks like coarse salt. If you like darker roasted coffees, you're gonna wanna grind your coffee a little bit coarser, and if you like your coffees roasted on the lighter side, you're gonna wanna go a little bit finer. But now I'm gonna take this little metal chopstick thing. You don't need this, you can use anything that's fine and pointy like this, and I'm gonna use this almost as a distribution tool. So I'm gonna start in the middle and then work my way to the outside, and that just makes sure that I don't have any clumps in my ground coffee. So now my water's heated to 190 degrees. I have my ground coffee in the brewer. It's time to start brewing. So I'm gonna pick up my kettle, and what I'm gonna do is do the first pour, which is called the pre-infusion or the bloom, and you'll see why in a minute. So what I'm trying to do here is I wanna start my pour in the center of this coffee bed and then slowly work my way to the outside. I'm gonna be pouring 50 grams of water for my pre-infusion, and this is one of the biggest things that you can change in this brew to influence the outcome and the flavors of your coffee. So the more water you pour on your first pour, the more acidic your coffee is gonna be. And the less water you pour, the sweeter it's gonna be. So for this coffee specifically, I want a really balanced cup, and 50 grams of water is kind of right in the middle. If I wanted it really sweet, I'd go for about 30 grams. If I wanted it really acidic, I'd go for like 70 or 80 grams. So I'm gonna hit start on my coffee scale and I'm gonna start pouring, going right for the middle and then working my way to the outside. And I'm gonna be keeping my eye right on the scale, and I'm gonna be shooting for 50 grams. I went a little bit over, that's okay. You just gotta try for the best that you can. Now you can kind of see why this is called the bloom, because you can see the coffee kind of like puffing or kind of like expanding. And those are the gases, that's the CO2 leaving the coffee. This shows you that you have a fresh roast. So you really wanna see that during your pre-infusion. But now that my scale's hit 30 seconds, I'm gonna do my second pour. And for this one, I'm actually going to be going for 100 grams, which gives me a total of 150 grams so far that's been poured into this brewer. Now my goal at the end of this is for this brew to take between 2 minutes and 50 seconds and 3 minutes. So now that my scale's hit 1 minute, I'm gonna do my third pour for another 50 grams. Now for my fourth pour, I'm gonna do another 50 grams, but I'm actually gonna start on the outside and work my way in. And that's because I want a flat bed. So once I'm finished brewing and I look at the bed of this coffee, I want it to look totally flat. That means that I get a nice and even distribution in my coffee. So now that it's hit 2 minutes, I'm gonna do my last and final pour, and this is gonna be another 50 grams again. So if you're paying attention to my recipe, it's 50, 100, 50, 50, 50. Now that I've hit 300 right on the nose, I'm gonna show you another trick. And you're actually gonna pick the brewer up like this, and you're just gonna give it a little bit of a spin. And what that's gonna do is that's gonna help with the distribution of your coffee, and it's gonna help any imperfections kind of settle down. 250, 257, 258, 259, 3 minutes. So now I'm gonna pull this brewer off, and my brew is complete. There's nothing else that I can do to this coffee other than take it, swirl it around like this, give it a sniff. And something that I like to do is also evaluate the color. You kind of want it to look like Coca-Cola. So I'm just gonna pour myself a little cup, because what I like to do is drink this coffee while it cools. Something that's great about specialty coffee is as it cools down, it actually improves, and more of the notes and more of the flavors of the coffee they get stronger and stronger, and they get more noticeable. So with a washed coffee like this, I'm looking for notes of dark chocolate, cacao nibs, roasted nuts, and spices. And something you might want to try at home is, and you might think it's a little bit foolish, but you actually make an expression in your mouth and you slurp the coffee a little bit and kind of like make a mist that sprays your mouth like this. And what that does is it kind of coats your whole palate and allows you to enjoy all the flavors of the coffee in its entirety. This coffee is delicious. This is actually my favorite go-to drinking coffee. When I just want a cup of coffee and hang out and just drink something that's calming, relaxing, something that is recognizable, something that's delicious. this is always my go-to. So whether this is your first time watching someone do a pour over like this, or whether you're an expert, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope there's something you could take away from it. Thank you guys so much for following along, and I'll see you on the next one.